The morning my face appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine, my phone exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, all from numbers I had deliberately deleted 4 years ago. My mother's voice trembled through the voicemail, dripping with artificial sweetness that made my stomach turn. "Linda, darling, we're so proud of you. Why didn't you tell us? We're family. Call me back immediately." My father's message was shorter, more demanding. "Linda, this is unacceptable. You need to return home and discuss your obligations to this family." And Sophie, my younger sister, sent a flurry of texts that started with congratulations and quickly devolved into accusations. "How could you do this without telling me? I'm your sister. You owe us." I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor looking down at the city that had witnessed my transformation, and I felt absolutely nothing toward them. The woman on that Forbes cover titled "The Biotech Queen Revolutionizing Medicine" was someone they had never bothered to know. But if you want to understand how I got here, if you want to know what it really takes to rise from the ashes of betrayal, then stay with me. This story isn't pretty. It's raw, it's painful, and it's real. And if it resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories like mine, and leave a comment sharing your own experience. You're not alone. I promise you that. Now let me take you back to where it all began, to the night that changed everything. 4 years earlier, I sat at our family's mahogany dining table, the one my mother had imported from Italy, the one she polished every Sunday until it gleamed like a mirror. The chandelier above cast perfect lighting on our perfect dinner: roasted chicken with herbs, garlic, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, arranged like a still life painting. My father sat at the head of the table in his pressed suit, even at home. My mother, Margaret, wore pearls and a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sophie, 2 years younger than me but infinitely more cherished, laughed at something our father said, her blonde hair catching the light in a way that mine never seemed to. I was cutting my chicken into small, precise pieces when my father cleared his throat. That sound always preceded an announcement, a verdict, a decree. "Linda," he said, not looking at me, focusing instead on his wine glass as he swirled the burgundy liquid. "Your mother and I have been discussing your future." I set down my fork carefully. "My future. You're 22 now," my mother added, her voice carrying that tone of false concern she had perfected over the years. "You've graduated from college. It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet." Sophie's fork paused midway to her mouth, her eyes widening with poorly concealed delight. "What exactly do you mean?" I asked, though something cold was already forming in my chest, a premonition of pain. "We mean," my father said, finally looking at me with those ice blue eyes that had never held warmth for me, "that we will no longer be supporting you financially. You need to figure out your own path. Make your own way. We've given you an excellent education, and now it's time for you to use it." The words landed like slaps. I felt my face flush hot, then cold. "I see," I managed to say. "And Sophie?" "Sophie is different," my mother said, quickly reaching over to pat Sophie's hand. "She's younger and she has such entrepreneurial spirit. She needs our support to launch her business ventures." Sophie smiled at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not personal, Linda. Mom and Dad just think you're more capable of being independent." More capable. That was their excuse for everything. Linda is more capable, so Linda doesn't need help. Linda is more capable, so Linda can handle being ignored. Linda is more capable, so Linda doesn't deserve the same love, the same attention, the same financial security that we shower on Sophie. I finished my dinner in silence while they discussed Sophie's latest business idea, something about luxury lifestyle consulting that made no sense to me but made my parents nod enthusiastically. I excused myself early, climbed the stairs to my small bedroom at the end of the hall, the one that used to be a storage room before they converted it when I was 12. Sophie's room was twice the size, with a bay window overlooking the garden. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to their laughter drift up from downstairs. They had forgotten I existed as usual. I should have been used to it by then, but each instance of their disregard still cut fresh and deep. A week later, they threw a party. Not just any party, but an elaborate celebration that transformed our house into something from a magazine spread. White roses everywhere, a jazz quartet in the corner, champagne flowing like water, and at least 100 guests mingling in their designer clothes and practiced smiles. I came downstairs in a simple black dress, my dark hair pulled back, and immediately felt invisible. No one greeted me. My mother was too busy showing off Sophie, who wore a stunning red dress that matched her lipstick perfectly. Everyone," my father announced, tapping his champagne glass with a fork until the room fell silent. Margaret and I have a very special announcement to make. As you all know, Sophie has been working incredibly hard on building her business, and we couldn't be more proud of her ambition and drive. I stood near the staircase holding a glass of orange juice because I had never acquired a taste for alcohol watching this performance unfold. So today, my mother continued, her voice thick with emotion. We want to give Sophie something to help her on her journey to success. Darling, come here. Sophie floated to their side, her smile radiant. My father pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a key, shiny and new. This, he said, is the key to the penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. The one you've always loved, sweetheart. It's yours. We had it wrapped with a red ribbon waiting for you. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Sophie squealed and hugged them both, tears of joy streaming down her face. People rushed forward to celebrate with her, to see the key, to exclaim how generous and wonderful my parents were. I stood there, my orange juice trembling in my hand, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, but crack. A penthouse overlooking the lake. The property had to be worth at least $2 million. They had given it to her wrapped with a red ribbon like a birthday present, while they had told me just a week ago that I needed to figure out my own finances. Someone bumped into me, didn't apologize, didn't even notice. I heard a woman say, "Where's the other daughter? What's her name again?" But no one answered because no one cared. I was the forgotten one, the capable one, the one who didn't need anything. I set down my glass on a side table and walked quietly up the stairs. In my room, I pulled out my old backpack from college and began filling it with essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the few books that meant something to me, and a photo of my grandmother, the only person in this family who had ever truly seen me. I worked methodically without crying because tears seemed inadequate for what I was feeling. This was beyond sadness. This was a severing. I left a note on my bed, short and simple. Thank you for teaching me that I need to take care of myself. I'm starting now. Then I walked down the back stairs through the kitchen, where catering staff rushed about, and out the back door into the cool October night. I didn't look back at the house, though. I could hear the party still in full swing, could see through the windows the way the chandelier light illuminated my family's happiness, my sister's triumph. I walked to the bus stop 3 blocks away and sat on the bench with my backpack at my feet. A red ribbon from the party decorations had somehow caught on my sleeve. I pulled it off and let it flutter away in the wind. As I watched it disappear into the darkness, I whispered to myself, "You want me to figure it out on my own? Fine. But one day you're going to regret treating me like I didn't matter. One day you'll see what you lost when you chose her over me." The bus arrived and I got on, heading toward my friend Rachel's apartment across town, the only place I knew I could stay while I figured out my next move. Rachel had been my roommate in college, the one person who had always told me my family's treatment of me wasn't normal, wasn't okay. She opened her door at midnight, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug without asking questions. "I'm never going back," I told her, my voice steady and cold. "I'm going to build something they can't take credit for, something they can't diminish. And I'm going to do it completely on my own." "Then we'd better get started," Rachel said, making up the couch for me with blankets and pillows. "What's your plan?" I thought about my degree in biochemistry that my parents had barely acknowledged at graduation, about the research ideas I had been developing in my senior thesis, about the professor who had told me I had real potential if I pursue the graduate studies. "I'm going to apply for research positions," I said. "I'm going to find someone who actually sees value in what I can do." That night, lying on Rachel's couch, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red ribbon on the penthouse door, saw Sophie's delighted face, heard the applause for her good fortune. The unfairness of it burned in my chest like acid. The next morning, I started my job search. I applied to every research lab, every biotech company, every pharmaceutical firm in the city. I sent out 32 applications that first week. I got 3 responses. 2 were rejections. One was from Dr. Evelyn Reed. Dr. Evelyn Reed was a legend in the biomedical research community. She had pioneered several breakthrough treatments for autoimmune diseases and held over 40 patents. She was also known for being ruthlessly demanding, impossible to please, and notoriously difficult to work for. Her lab had a turnover rate that was whispered about in academic circles. Assistants rarely lasted more than 6 months. Her email was brief: "Come in for an interview tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. Don't waste my time." I showed up 15 minutes early, wearing the only professional outfit I owned that wasn't wrinkled from being stuffed in my backpack. The research facility was a sleek glass building in the biotech district, all clean lines and cutting-edge technology. I gave my name to the receptionist and waited, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Doctor. Reed appeared exactly at 9. She was in her late 50s with steel gray hair pulled back, severely sharp green eyes behind frameless glasses, and a no-nonsense expression that made me sit up straighter. Linda Hayes, she asked, her voice crisp. Yes, ma'am. Come with me. And don't call me ma'am. It's Dr. Reed. I followed her through a maze of corridors to her private office, which was less an office and more a war room, filled with research papers, data charts, and complex molecular models. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and sat down, fixing those green eyes on me like lasers. Tell me why you want to work here, she said. No preamble, no warm-up questions. I had practiced my answer, something diplomatic about admiring her work and wanting to learn from the best. But sitting there under that penetrating gaze, I found myself telling the truth instead. Because I need to prove something, I said. I need to prove that I'm worth more than my family thinks I am. And I need someone who won't go easy on me, someone who will push me until I'm better than I ever thought I could be. Doctor. Reed's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people want an easy supervisor, someone who coddles them and tells them they're doing great even when they're mediocre. I'm not most people, I said. And I don't want to be mediocre. I want to be exceptional. She studied me for a long moment, and I felt like she was seeing right through me, seeing all the hurt and anger and desperate need to matter that I had been carrying. Your transcript is impressive, she finally said. Your thesis on targeted drug delivery systems showed real insight. But working here isn't like college. I don't accept excuses. I don't tolerate laziness. If you can't keep up, I'll replace you without a second thought. Do you understand? I understand, I said. Can you start Monday? Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost gasped. Yes. Absolutely yes. Good. Your salary is $45,000 to start. If you prove yourself, it goes up. If you don't, you're out. Now get out of my office. I have work to do. I stood up, managed a thank you, and walked out on shaking legs. In the elevator down, I let myself smile for the first time in weeks. I had a job. A real job with one of the most brilliant minds in biomedical research. This was my start. This was how I would build my new life. The next 3 years were the hardest of my life, but also the most transformative. Dr. Reed was everything she had promised to be, and worse. She was exacting, critical, and seemingly never satisfied. My first month, she tore apart my work so thoroughly I went home and cried into Rachel's shoulder, convinced I had made a terrible mistake. She told me my literature review was adequate at best, and that if I wanted to do adequate work, I should find another lab, I sobbed. She said I was wasting her time and mine. So prove her wrong, Rachel said simply. Show her what you're really capable of. So I did. I worked 16-hour days. I read every journal article I could find on our research topics. I learned to anticipate Dr. Reed's questions, to shore up the weak points in my methodology before she could point them out, to think 3 steps ahead of where we were. Slowly, grudgingly, I started to get better. And even more slowly, even more grudgingly, Dr. Reed started to approve. This protocol is acceptable, she said one day, 9 months into my tenure. From her, that was high praise. By the end of my first year, she had started giving me more responsibility, letting me design my own experiments, trusting me with sensitive equipment and valuable samples. I was no longer just a research assistant. I was becoming a scientist in my own right. During this time, my family tried to contact me occasionally. My mother sent birthday cards with generic messages, "Hope you're well, love, Mom." My father sent a single email asking if I had come to my senses yet. Sophie texted once, "Are you still mad? It's been so long." Let it go. I deleted every message without responding. They had made their choice and I had made mine. In my second year at Dr. Reed's lab, we had a breakthrough. I had been working on developing a new biomaterial that could deliver cancer drugs directly to tumor sites while minimizing damage to healthy tissue. It was based on a novel polymer structure that responded to the acidic environment around tumors. The preliminary results were extraordinary. The material worked even better than we had hoped, showing 300% improvement in targeted delivery compared to existing methods. Dr. Reed looked at my data for a long time, then looked at me. This could change treatment protocols for multiple cancer types, she said quietly. Do you understand what you've done here, Linda? I did. I understood that this was more than just a successful experiment. This was something that could save lives, that could make a real difference in the world. And I had done it. Me, the daughter who wasn't worth investing in, who had been told to figure things out on her own. "We need to publish this, doctor," Reed said. "And we need to patent the process. I'm making you co-first author. You've earned it." That paper, when it came out in Nature Biotechnology 6 months later, caused a sensation in the scientific community. Suddenly, I was being invited to conferences, getting emails from researchers around the world wanting to collaborate, fielding calls from biotech companies interested in licensing our technology. I was 25 years old and I had my name on one of the most significant papers in my field that year. "Doctor." Reed called me into her office one afternoon. "Sit down," she said, and her tone was different, somehow less harsh than usual. "I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you to let it go to your head." I sat curious and a little nervous. "When you first came to me 3 years ago, I almost didn't hire you," she said. "You were clearly running from something, clearly desperate. People who are desperate often burn out fast. But I saw something else too. I saw hunger. Real hunger, the kind that doesn't quit. And I saw that you were angry, not in a destructive way, but in a focused way. You wanted to prove something." I stayed quiet, surprised she had read me so accurately. "I've watched you transform yourself from a competent student into a first-rate scientist," she continued. "You've worked harder than anyone I've ever supervised, and you've never once asked for special treatment or made excuses. Whatever or whoever you're trying to prove yourself to, I hope you realize by now that you've done it. You're exceptional, Linda. Don't forget that." Coming from Dr. Evelyn Reed, those words meant everything. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. "Thank you," I managed. "You've pushed me to become someone I didn't know I could be." "Good," she said briskly, back to her usual self. "Now get back to work. We have 3 grant proposals due next month." It was around this time that I met Mark Reynolds. He appeared in my life in the most adversarial way possible, which probably should have been a warning, but instead became the foundation of something unexpected. I was at a biotech investors conference in San Francisco, presenting our research to potential funding partners. Dr. Reed had sent me alone a test of whether I could handle the business side of science as well as the lab work. I was mid-presentation explaining our polymer's unique properties when a hand shot up in the audience. "What about degradation rates in vivo?" the man asked. He was in his early 30s, wearing a sharp navy suit with dark hair and intense brown eyes that seemed to be calculating something behind his question. "The polymer degrades completely within 6 weeks, leaving no toxic residue," I answered. "We've done extensive testing in multiple animal models." And the production costs, he pressed. "Your method requires specialized equipment and rare catalysts. How does that scale economically?" He was trying to poke holes in my presentation to find the weaknesses. I felt a flash of irritation but kept my voice professional. "We've developed a simplified synthesis route that reduces costs by 40% and eliminates the need for rare materials. The economics are favorable for clinical development." "I'd like to see those numbers," he said. "They're in the appendix," I replied coolly. Page 47 of the presentation packet. After my talk, he approached me at the coffee break. "Mark Reynolds," he said, extending his hand. "I apologize if I seemed aggressive in there. It's my job to ask the hard questions." I shook his hand briefly. "Linda Hayes. And I appreciate hard questions. It means someone is actually paying attention." He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost charming. "Your research is impressive. Really impressive. I represent Quantum Ventures, and we're looking for exactly this kind of breakthrough technology to invest in. I'll have to discuss any funding opportunities with Dr. Reed," I said carefully. "Of course. But I'd like to talk to you more about your vision for this technology. Are you free for dinner tonight?" He hesitated. This felt like it could be a business meeting or something else, and I wasn't sure which. "I don't usually mix business with social events," I said. "Smart policy," he replied. "Then let's keep it strictly business. There's a steakhouse 2 blocks from here. We can discuss potential partnership terms, and you can tell me why I should convince my partners to invest $5 million in your research." $5 million. That kind of funding could accelerate our work by years. 7 o'clock, I said. That dinner was the first of many meetings with Mark. He was sharp, sometimes infuriatingly so, but he was also genuinely interested in the science, not just the profit potential. Over the next several months, as we negotiated the investment terms, I found myself looking forward to our calls and meetings. He challenged me, but not in the cruel way my family had, not in the demanding way, doctor. Reed did. He challenged me the way a partner does, pushing me to think bigger, to be more ambitious. You're thinking too small, he said one day over coffee, spreading out my 5-year plan on the table. This technology could be the foundation for a whole new company. Why are you content to just license it out and collect royalties? Because I'm a scientist, not an entrepreneur, I said. You could be both, he insisted. Linda, do you realize what you have here? This isn't just one product. It's a platform technology. You could build an entire pipeline of therapeutics based on this delivery system. You could start your own company, maintain control of your research, and actually get these treatments to patients faster than any big pharma company ever would. The idea terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure. I wouldn't even know where to start. That's what I'm here for, Mark said, and his smile was genuine, encouraging. I believe in this technology, but more than that, I believe in you. You have something special, Linda. You have the drive and the intelligence to make this work. Let me help you build something extraordinary. Doctor. Reed, when I told her about Mark's proposal, was surprisingly supportive. I've been waiting for you to think beyond just being my research assistant, she said. You're ready for this. And if you're going to start a company, you'll need to be ruthless. Can you do that? I think so, I said. I know, so she corrected. I've watched you grow a spine over the past 3 years. You came to me broken, and you've rebuilt yourself into someone formidable. Use that. Build your company. Change the world. But remember, I get 10% equity for the foundational research. I laughed despite myself. Deal. Starting BioNova Therapeutics was like jumping off a cliff and building the parachute on the way down. Mark helped me navigate the complex world of startup funding, intellectual property law, and business development. Doctor. Reed let me split my time between her lab and the new company, maintaining her connection as chief scientific advisor. And I worked harder than I had ever worked before, putting in 20-hour days, sleeping in my office more often than my apartment, living on coffee and determination. During all of this, I barely thought about my family. They existed somewhere in my past, a painful chapter I had closed. Rachel would sometimes ask if I ever planned to reach out to them to tell them what I was doing, and I always said no. They had made it clear I wasn't worth their investment. I had taken them at their word. But then 3 years and 8 months after I had walked out of that party with a backpack and a broken heart, my face appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine. The article was titled, "The Biotech Queen Revolutionizing Medicine, How Dr. Linda Hayes Built a $200 million Company from Scratch." There was a photo of me in my lab holding up a vial of our signature polymer, looking confident and successful. The article detailed my breakthrough research, the founding of BioNova, our recent $50 million Series B funding round, and our pipeline of cancer therapeutics that were showing unprecedented results in clinical trials. It talked about how I had gone from unknown researcher to one of the most promising young scientists in the field in less than 4 years. I found out about the article when Mark called me at 6 in the morning, his voice excited. Linda, have you seen it? You're on Forbes. This is huge. I picked up my phone and pulled up the magazine's website. There I was, Doctor. Linda Hayes, Forbes 30 Under 30 Healthcare 2024 featured cover story. I stared at my own face, barely recognizing the confident, accomplished woman looking back at me. Was this really me? The girl who had left her family's house with nothing, who had been told she wasn't worth investing in. Linda. You still there? Mark's voice came through the phone. I'm here, I said. I can't believe this is real. Believe it, he said warmly. You've earned every bit of this. And get ready, because once this hits newsstands tomorrow, your life is about to get very interesting. He was right. By 7 a.m., my email inbox had exploded. By 8, my phone was ringing nonstop. By 9, I had stopped looking because the number of notifications was overwhelming. But 3 numbers stood out among all the others: my mother's cell, my father's cell, and Sophie's cell. Each had called multiple times and left voicemails. I sat in my office, the sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below me like a kingdom I had conquered, and I played my mother's voicemail. Linda, darling, it's Mom. I just saw the Forbes article. We're so proud of you. I knew you would do something special. We always believed in you. Why didn't you tell us about your company? We would have loved to support you. Call me back as soon as you can. We need to talk about this as a family. Love you, sweetheart. The artificial sweetness in her voice made my stomach turn. We always believed in you. That was a lie so blatant it was almost funny. I deleted the message and played my father's. Linda, this is your father. I've seen the magazine article. This is quite an achievement. However, I'm concerned about the publicity and how it might affect the family. We need to discuss your responsibilities to this family and how we can leverage your success appropriately. Call me back immediately. Responsibilities to the family. Leverage my success. Not congratulations for what I had built, but calculations about how they could benefit from it. I deleted that message too, and moved on to Sophie's texts. OMG Linda, you're on Forbes. Why didn't you tell me? This is so amazing. My sister, the famous scientist. But seriously, why have you been ignoring us? That's really hurtful. Mom and Dad want to talk to you. They're really proud but also kind of hurt that you've shut us out. Can you at least text me back? We're family, Linda. Also, I could really use your help right now. My business has hit some rough patches, and I know you understand about building companies now. Maybe we could meet up. There it was. The real reason they were reaching out. Not because they cared about me or were genuinely proud, but because they wanted something. Sophie needed help with her failing business, and they thought I would just hand over money or connections or whatever they needed, like the dutiful daughter I had never been allowed to be. I set down my phone and laughed a sound without humor. Mark knocked on my door and poked his head in. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Ghosts of Christmas past, I said. My family has decided to acknowledge my existence now that I'm successful. He came in and closed the door behind him, concern on his face. What do you want to do? Nothing, I said. I want to do absolutely nothing. They made their choice 4 years ago when they decided I wasn't worth their investment. I made my choice when I walked out of their house and decided to build my own life. Those choices stand. Are you sure? Mark asked gently. Sometimes people deserve second chance. Not these people, I said firmly. Not after what they did. You don't get to throw someone away and then come crawling back when they turn out to be valuable after all. That's not how love works. That's not how family works. Mark nodded slowly. Then don't respond. Let your success speak for itself. But my family wasn't going to let it be that simple. When I didn't return their calls or messages, they escalated. My mother started calling my office line, leaving increasingly desperate messages with my assistant. My father sent emails marked urgent. Sophie posted on social media about how excited she was about her brilliant sister's success and how family is everything, tagging me in posts I hadn't given her permission to associate me with. I ignored it all for a week. Then on a Friday afternoon, my assistant buzzed me with an apologetic tone. Doctor Hayes, there's a Margaret Hayes here to see you. She says she's your mother and that it's important. My hands clenched on my desk. She had come here. To my office. Without calling, without asking permission, she had just shown up assuming I would see her. I took a deep breath and pressed the intercom. Send her in. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city, composing myself. Behind me, I heard the door open and close, heard the sharp click of expensive heels on hardwood floor. Linda, darling, my mother's voice, said warm and affectionate, as if the last 4 years hadn't happened. This office is absolutely stunning. You've done so well for yourself. I turned around slowly. Margaret Hayes stood in the middle of my office, perfectly put together as always in a designer suit, her hair professionally styled, her makeup flawless. She looked older than I remembered, small lines around her eyes and mouth that hadn't been there before. But her smile was the same, bright and fake. Why are you here? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Her smile faltered slightly. Is that any way to greet your mother? I came to congratulate you on your success. And to see you, of course. We've missed you terribly. Really, I said, crossing my arms. Because for 4 years, none of you seemed to notice I was gone. That's not fair, Linda, she said, moving closer. You left without telling us where you were going. You cut off all contact. What were we supposed to do? You were supposed to care, I said flatly. You were supposed to treat me like I mattered. But you didn't. You made it very clear that Sophie was the daughter worth investing in, and I was just the spare who needed to figure things out on her own. We never said that, Margaret protested. Yes, you did, I replied, my voice rising. You said exactly that. At dinner in front of the whole family. Linda, you need to figure out your own finances. A week later, you gave Sophie a $2 million penthouse with a red ribbon on it. Don't you dare stand there and act like you don't remember. Margaret's face flushed. We were trying to teach you independence. To help you become strong. Bullshit, I said, and I watched her flinch at the profanity. I had never cursed in front of my mother before. You were playing favorites. You always played favorites. Sophie was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the disappointment you couldn't be bothered with. Don't rewrite history now that it's convenient for you. She was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I had gotten through to her that she might actually apologize. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" I asked warily. "It's an invoice," she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "For your upbringing. Your father and I calculated all the expenses we incurred, raising you, educating you, providing for you. Food, clothes, school tuition, medical care, housing. It comes to approximately $1 million. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. On a voice. "You're giving me a bill for being my mother. We invested in you," she said, straightening her spine. "And now that you're successful, it's only fair that you compensate us for that investment. This is a family contribution, Linda. It's what's expected." I walked over and took the paper from her hand. It was professionally formatted with line items and calculations, official-looking despite being completely absurd. "Children don't owe their parents for being born," I said slowly, carefully. "Parents choose to have children. That's not a debt. That's not a transaction." "Everything is a transaction," Margaret said coldly. "And you owe us. We could have given that money to Sophie, could have invested it in her businesses. Instead, we spent it on you, and now you're successful. It's time to pay us back." The audacity of it left me breathless. This woman who had spent my entire childhood making me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't worthy of love or attention, was now demanding payment for the bare minimum of parental care. "Get out," I said. "Linda, be reasonable. Get out of my office," I repeated louder this time, "and get out of my life. You want to know what I learned from you? I learned that some people only value you for what they can get from you. I learned that blood doesn't make family, respect does. And I learned that the best thing I ever did was leave your house and build a life where people actually see my worth. If you don't pay this, we'll go to the media," Margaret threatened. "We'll tell them what an ungrateful daughter you are. We'll tell them you abandoned your family. We'll ruin your reputation." Behind her, my office door opened. Mark stepped in, clearly having heard raised voices. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his tone polite but with an edge to it. "No, everything is not all right," Margaret snapped. "This is between me and my daughter." "Mrs. Hayes," Mark said, moving to stand beside me, "I think you should leave now." "And who are you?" Margaret demanded. "I'm Mark Reynolds' doctor. Hayes' business partner and legal counsel," he said smoothly. "And I'm advising you that if you make any defamatory statements to the media about Dr. Hayes, we will pursue legal action. Additionally, this invoice you've presented has no legal standing whatsoever. Parents cannot retroactively charge their adult children for child-rearing expenses. If you continue to harass Dr. Hayes, we'll file for a restraining order." Margaret's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "You can't do this, Linda. We're your family." "No," I said quietly. "You're the people I happen to be born to. But you stopped being my family when you made it clear I didn't matter to you. Now please leave." She looked between Mark and me, perhaps seeing for the first time that I wasn't the same uncertain girl she had dismissed 4 years ago. I was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who had allies and power of my own. She grabbed her purse and stalked toward the door, then turned back. "Your father will be very disappointed," she said, a last attempt at manipulation. "Good," I replied. "Tell him that makes us even." After she left, I sank into my chair, shaking. Mark closed the door and came to sit across from me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "That was worse than I imagined. She actually brought an invoice. For being my mother." "That's incredibly cruel," Mark said gently. "But you handled it perfectly. You didn't back down. You didn't let her manipulate you." "She threatened to go to the media," I said. "Let her try," Mark replied. "We have the truth on our side. And honestly, if your family wants to air your dirty laundry in public, it will backfire on them far worse than on you. Wealthy parents demand payment from self-made daughter is not a good look." He was right, but I still felt raw, exposed. For 4 years, I had kept my family at a distance, had convinced myself I was over the hurt they had caused. But seeing my mother, hearing her demands, had ripped open old wounds I thought had healed. "I need to do something," I said suddenly. "I need to make sure they can never do this to anyone else." "What do you mean?" Mark asked. An idea was forming in my mind, something that had been percolating since the Forbes article came out. I want to start a foundation, I said. A scholarship fund for talented students who don't have family support. Kids who are brilliant but whose families can't or won't invest in them. I want to call it the Independence Fund. Mark's face broke into a genuine smile. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. You're turning your pain into something that helps others. Exactly, I said, feeling a surge of energy and purpose. And I want to announce it publicly. I want to tell my story, not the sanitized version, but the real one. About being told to figure things out on my own and actually doing it. About building success from nothing. About what real independence means. Over the next 2 weeks, Mark and I worked with a PR firm to craft my story and set up the Independence Fund. Dr. Reed contributed seed funding and her name as an advisor. Several other successful scientists and entrepreneurs who had similar stories reached out to join our board. The fund quickly gained momentum and credibility. We scheduled a press conference to announce both the fund and my company's latest breakthrough, a new cancer treatment entering phase 2 trials. The event was held at the city's convention center, and the turnout was massive. Journalists, investors, fellow scientists, and community leaders filled the auditorium. I stood backstage watching through a gap in the curtain, my heart pounding. "You ready?" Mark asked, standing beside me. "No," I admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." He squeezed my hand briefly. "You've got this. Just speak from the heart." I walked out onto the stage to applause, positioned myself behind the podium, and looked out at the sea of faces. The lights were bright, cameras flashing, but I felt strangely calm. This was my moment, my story to tell on my terms. "Good afternoon," I began. "Thank you all for coming. Today I'm here to announce 2 things. First, BioNova Therapeutics has achieved significant results in our phase 2 trials for our targeted cancer therapy. The data shows 70% improved outcomes compared to standard treatment with dramatically reduced side effects. This therapy, if approved, could change the lives of millions of cancer patients worldwide." Applause rippled through the room. I waited for it to die down. "But the second announcement is more personal," I continued. 4 years ago, I was told by my parents that I needed to figure out my own finances, that they would no longer support me. That same week, they gave my younger sister a multi-million-dollar penthouse apartment. I was 22, newly graduated, and suddenly on my own. I could have become bitter. I could have given up. Instead, I decided to prove that their judgment of my worth was wrong. I could hear murmurs in the audience, see people leaning forward. Today, I'm announcing the Independence Fund, a scholarship and support program for talented students who, like me, don't have family backing. We'll provide not just financial support, but mentorship, resources, and community for young people who are building their futures from the ground up. Because I believe that your worth isn't determined by how much your family invests in you. It's determined by what you do with the opportunities you create for yourself. The applause was louder this time, enthusiastic. But I wasn't finished. My parents taught me a valuable lesson when they said, "Figure it out yourself." They taught me that I couldn't rely on anyone but me. That I needed to be strong, independent, and self-sufficient. So I did exactly what they told me to do. I figured it out. And now I want to help others do the same. Because every person deserves the chance to prove their worth, regardless of whether their family recognizes it. As I spoke, I noticed movement at the back of the auditorium. The doors had opened, and 2 figures stood silhouetted against the light from the hallway. Even from this distance, I recognized them. Margaret and Sophie. They had come. Of course they had come. This was too public an event for them to miss too much of an opportunity to try to insert themselves into my success story. I felt Mark shift beside me on stage, noticed Dr. Reed sitting in the front row, tense up, both of them ready to intervene if needed. But I held up a hand slightly, a signal I had this under control. Some people might say I'm being vindictive. I continued, my eyes on my mother and sister at the back of the room. That I'm airing private family matters in public. But I disagree. I think it's important to speak truthfully about the obstacles we face and how we overcome them. Because somewhere out there is another young person being told they don't matter, that they're not worth investing in. And I want them to know that those people are wrong. You do matter. You are worth it. And you can build something extraordinary if you refuse to accept other people's limited vision of who you are. Margaret started walking down the aisle, Sophie following her. Security moved to intercept them, but Margaret pulled out her phone, holding it up like a shield. "That's my daughter," she called out. "I'm so proud of her. Linda, darling." The room fell silent, all eyes swinging between Margaret and me. This was her play to publicly claim me now that I was successful, to paint herself as the proud mother who had always believed in me. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "speaking of family matters, my mother Margaret Hayes is here. She recently came to my office to present me with an invoice for $1 million demanding payment for raising me. She said that children owe their parents for the costs of their upbringing and that my success means I should compensate her for her investment." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret stopped mid-aisle, her face draining of color. Sophie grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "I tell you this," I continued, "not to humiliate anyone, but to illustrate a point. Some people view relationships, even family relationships, as transactional. They measure love in dollars and favors. But real relationships, real families aren't built on transactions. They're built on mutual respect, support, and genuine care. The Independence Fund operates on those principles. We support our scholars because we believe in them, not because we expect repayment. We invest in their futures because we know their worth, not because we're calculating a return." I could see Margaret backing toward the exit now, Sophie urgently whispering something to her. Security politely but firmly escorted them out of the auditorium. "Change isn't easy," I said, returning my attention to the audience. "Building something from nothing is hard. Standing up to people who want to diminish you is hard. But it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you lived according to your own values, not someone else's expectations." I wrapped up my speech with details about the Independence Fund, how to apply, how to contribute, and our plans for expansion. The response was overwhelming. People stood and applauded. Journalists rushed forward with questions. By the end of the event, we had received pledges totaling over $3 million for the fund from various donors who had been moved by the mission. Mark found me afterward in the green room. "That was incredible," he said. "You completely owned that moment. And the way you handled your mother trying to crash the event. Masterful." "I just told the truth," I said, feeling drained but satisfied. "I'm done hiding what happened. I'm done protecting people who never protected me." My phone was buzzing constantly with messages and calls. This time there was nothing from my family. They had finally gotten the message. I was not available for their manipulations anymore. I was not their backup plan or their cash cow. I was my own person, and I had built a life they couldn't touch. In the following weeks, the story went viral. Multiple news outlets picked up the angle of the self-made scientist versus her demanding family. Some people criticized me for airing family issues publicly, but far more people reached out to share their own stories of feeling undervalued by their families, of having to prove their worth despite lack of support. The Independence Fund received thousands of applications from students all over the country, and donations continued to pour in. Sophie's business, I learned through the grapevine, collapsed completely. The public scrutiny had revealed some questionable practices and poor financial management. The investors she had been relying on pulled out. She had to sell her penthouse, the one with the red ribbon, to pay off debts. My parents' social standing took a significant hit. Friends and associates began to distance themselves from the couple who had treated their successful daughter so poorly. My father lost a position on a prestigious board after members questioned his judgment and character. I didn't celebrate their downfall. There was no satisfaction in it. They had done this to themselves through their own choices and actions. I had simply refused to be complicit in the fiction they wanted to maintain. Mark and I grew closer during this time. What had started as a professional partnership had evolved into a deep friendship and then into something more. 6 months after the press conference, we were dating officially. He understood my drive, my need to prove myself, because he had his own demons from a childhood with demanding, never-satisfied parents. We were alike in our ambition, but also in our wounds, and we helped each other heal. Dr. Reed, in her gruff way, showed approval. "You found someone who challenges you without diminishing you," she said one day in the lab. "That's rare. Don't screw it up." "I'll try not to," I promised. "And Linda," she added, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not just as a scientist, but as a person. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into fuel for positive change. That takes real strength." Coming from Evelyn Reed, that meant more than any Forbes cover or funding round ever could. The Independence Fund flourished. In its first year, we supported 50 students. By year 2, we had expanded to 200 scholars across 12 states. These were brilliant young people studying everything from engineering to medicine to art, all of them lacking family support but possessing incredible potential. I made it a point to meet with every scholar personally to tell them that I believed in them, that their worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's validation. Many of them sent me letters and emails sharing their progress, their successes, their gratitude. Those messages filled a place in my heart that had been empty for so long. This was what family should feel like, I realized. Mutual support, genuine pride in each other's accomplishments, caring without conditions. 3 years after the press conference, BioNova Therapeutics received FDA approval for our flagship cancer therapy. The treatment would help thousands of patients fight their disease with fewer side effects and better outcomes. We had done it. From a late-night idea in Dr. Reed's lab to an approved life-saving medication, we had actually changed the world in a small but meaningful way. The approval coincided with my 30th birthday. Mark threw me a celebration at my favorite restaurant, inviting Dr. Reed, our BioNova Team Independence Fund board members, and my closest friends, including Rachel, who had let me sleep on her couch all those years ago when I had nowhere else to go. A toast, Mark said, standing up with his wine glass raised. To Linda, who proves every day that your beginning doesn't determine your ending. That you can rise above rejection and build something beautiful. That real strength comes from within, not from someone else's approval. Happy birthday, love. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. I looked around the table at these people who had chosen to be in my life, who valued me for who I was, who celebrated my successes without jealousy or calculation. This was my family now. The one I had built myself. Later that night, Mark and I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights spread out before us like stars. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if your parents had supported you back then? He asked. I thought about it. Sometimes, I admitted. But honestly, if they had supported me, I probably wouldn't have pushed myself so hard. I wouldn't have developed the resilience I needed. I wouldn't have learned to believe in myself independent of anyone else's opinion. So in a strange way, their rejection gave me a gift. It forced me to become stronger than I knew I could be. Still, Mark said it would have been nice if they had just loved you properly from the start. Yes, I agreed. It would have been nice. But I can't change the past. I can only control what I do with it. He pulled me close and we stood there in comfortable silence. No red ribbons haunted me anymore. No ghost of not being enough followed me. I had proven to myself that I was valuable, capable, and worthy of love and respect. The next morning, an envelope arrived at my office via courier. Inside was a handwritten letter from my mother. Dear Linda, it read. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the press conference. Your father and I have been in therapy trying to understand where we went wrong. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way we treated you, for the favoritism we showed Sophie, for making you feel like you didn't matter. You were right about everything you said. We did view our relationship with you as transactional. We did fail you as parents. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, and I'm ashamed. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, not because it reflects well on me, but because you did it despite us, not because of us. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. But I understand if you don't. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda, but it seemed genuine. She was finally taking responsibility. But the question was, did I want to let her back into my life? I called Dr. Reed. I got a letter from my mother, I said. An apology. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to respond to give her a chance. But part of me thinks it's too late, that too much damage has been done. Only you can decide that, Doctor. Reed said. But here's what I know about you, Linda. You're not a person who holds grudges out of spite. You protect yourself out of necessity. So ask yourself this, would having a relationship with your mother, even a limited one, enhance your life? Or would it just open old wounds? I thought about it for days. Finally, I wrote back a short email. Thank you for your letter. I appreciate the apology. I'm not ready for a full reconciliation, but I'm willing to talk occasionally. However, there need to be clear boundaries. You don't get to make demands on my time or resources. You don't get to try to manage my life or my relationships. If you can respect those boundaries, we can try to build something new. If not, then we stay where we are. The choice is yours. She responded immediately, I understand. I'll respect your boundaries. Thank you for giving me any chance at all. We started slowly. A phone call once a month, carefully neutral topics. She told me about the therapy she and my father were doing, about how they were learning to recognize their patterns of favoritism and control. She told me that Sophie had finally gotten her life together, that she was working a regular job and attending her own therapy sessions. I didn't share much about my personal life at first, keeping our conversations surface level. But gradually, over many months, I began to open up a little. I told her about BioNova's expansion plans, about the Independence Fund scholars who were graduating and starting their own successful careers, about Mark and how happy he made me. She listened without trying to insert herself or take credit. That was new. That was different. It wasn't the mother-daughter relationship I had wanted as a child, and it never would be. Too much had happened, too much trust had been broken. But it was something. A small connection carefully maintained with clear boundaries on both sides. My father never apologized. He maintained that he had been teaching me valuable lessons about independence, and that I should be grateful for his tough love. I had no relationship with him at all, and I was at peace with that. Some people can't change, and you have to accept that and move on. Sophie reached out once 2 years after the press conference, asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. She looked different, humbler, wearing simple clothes instead of designer labels, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. "I owe you an apology," she said as soon as we sat down. "I was horrible to you. I took advantage of Mom and Dad's favoritism. I acted like you didn't matter. I'm sorry." "Why now?" I asked. "Because I lost everything," she said simply. "I lost my business, my apartment, my so-called friends who only liked me for my money. And in the process of losing all that, I finally saw what you must have seen all along. That Mom and Dad's love was conditional. That they valued success and status over character. That they used us both, just in different ways." "How did they use you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "They used me as their trophy," Sophie said. "I was the one who made them look good, who fulfilled their image of what a daughter should be. But they didn't actually care about what I wanted or who I really was. They just wanted me to perform, being perfect. And when I failed, when my business collapsed, they dropped me almost as fast as they dropped you." "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said, and I meant it. "I deserved it," she replied. "And I deserved what you said at the press conference. I was complicit in how they treated you. I benefited from it. I need you to know that I know that now." We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't a reconciliation exactly. The damage was too deep for that. But it was an acknowledgement, a clearing of the air. We agreed to stay in occasional contact to see if we could build some kind of relationship as adults separate from our parents. "For what it's worth," Sophie said as we were leaving, "I'm really proud of what you've built. The Independence Fund is amazing. You turned your pain into something that helps other people. That's something I could never do." "You could," I said. "You just have to decide to do it." Now, as I sit here in my office 7 years after walking out of my parents' house with a backpack and a broken heart, I can honestly say I'm happy. Not just successful, but genuinely happy. I have work that fulfills me, people who love me for who I am, and a sense of purpose that goes beyond myself. The Independence Fund has supported over 500 students now. Many of them are graduating, starting careers, starting their own companies, making their own mark on the world. I get letters and emails regularly from scholars telling me how the fund changed their lives, gave them hope, showed them they were worth investing in even if their families didn't. BioNova Therapeutics has 3 approved therapies now and a dozen more in development. We've helped thousands of cancer patients extended lives, reduce suffering. Every day I get to wake up knowing that my work matters, that it makes a real difference. Mark proposed to me last month on the balcony, where we've had so many important conversations. No red ribbons, just a simple ring and a heartfelt speech about how I've changed his life, how he wants to build a future together. I said yes without hesitation. Dr. Reed, now in her mid-60s and thinking about retirement, has told me she wants me to take over her lab when she steps down. "You've become everything I hoped you would be," she said. "A brilliant scientist, yes, but more than that, a person of integrity and compassion. That's rarer than genius." My relationship with my mother remains limited but civil. We talk maybe once every 2 months. She's trying in her way to be better, though she'll never be the mother I needed when I was young. My father and I have no contact, and that's fine. Sophie and I exchange birthday cards and occasional texts. We're not close, but we're not enemies either. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things happened, if I wish my family had treated me differently from the start. The answer is complicated. Of course, I wish I had grown up feeling loved and valued. Of course, I wish I had never felt the pain of being cast aside by the people who were supposed to care for me most. But if they had treated me differently, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have the drive, the resilience, the absolute certainty that I can survive anything because I've already survived the worst. I wouldn't have built BioNova. I wouldn't have created the Independence Fund. I wouldn't have helped all those students who needed someone to believe in them. So no, I don't regret it. I survived it. I used it. I transformed it into something meaningful. And that's what I want you to know if you're out there facing your own red ribbon moment, your own family rejection, your own realization that the people you love don't value you the way you deserve. It's not about them. It never was. It's about what you choose to do with the hand you're dealt. You can let their rejection define you, or you can use it as fuel to become something they never imagined you could be. You can accept their limited vision of your worth, or you can prove them catastrophically wrong. The choice, as it always is yours. I chose to rise. I chose to build. I chose to matter not because they finally acknowledged me, but because I acknowledged myself. That's the lesson. That's the truth. Your value doesn't come from other people's recognition. It comes from knowing deep in your core that you are worthy of love, respect, and success, regardless of whether anyone else sees it. So here's my question for you. What will you choose? Will you let someone else's opinion of you become your truth? Or will you write your own story? Think about it. And if this story resonated with you, if you've faced similar struggles, or if you know someone who has, please like this video, subscribe for more real stories about overcoming adversity, and leave a comment sharing what this meant to you, or what your own journey has been like. Your story matters. You matter. Never forget that.